All right, stick with me. We are about to dive into a scandal unfolding right inside the walls of Windsor Castle. What started as the standard archive check spiraled when a forgotten decree from Queen Elizabeth II suddenly surfaced. Within hours, high level aides were scrambling, secret files were pulled, and whispers began echoing through the palace halls. King Charles was hit with a truth that threatens to completely upend what Camilla thought was hers. Before we dig into why this is shaking the monarchy, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a beat. At first, nobody in the royal household felt any alarm archive reviews are just part of the job, but according to palace insiders, this specific request triggered an immediate, highly unusual reaction. Senior archivists began aggressively cross checking records, comparing handwritten notes against decades old authorization logs. What should have been boring paperwork transformed into a high stakes, serious situation. As investigators pushed deeper, the concern inside Windsor grew with every new question they uncovered. Sources suggest several files pointed toward a mysterious directive that had been hidden in plain sight. The document itself wasn't new, but the verification process suddenly brought it back into the light. Archivists found supporting evidence for its legitimacy, leaving them no choice but to escalate everything to the top. Buried papers became the focus of intense high level meetings, and the mood shifted overnight. Even regular staff noticed the change closed doors everywhere and constant, frantic, hushed consultations. Advisors, historians, and legal experts were all summoned to review the explosive material. Veteran employees could feel it in the air. Something massive was definitely going down behind closed doors. No official word came out, but the tension in the palace became impossible to ignore. King Charles was among the first senior figures to be briefed on these preliminary findings. Reports describe a monarch caught in a difficult spot between sheer curiosity and genuine worry. This information wasn't just ancient history sitting on a shelf. It carried massive implications that hit directly into the present day. Insiders claim the discovery involves strict, long standing rules governing access to the legendary Windsor Vault. If these reports are true, the fallout could be far bigger than just dusty old records. Meanwhile, rumors are catching fire all through royal circles. Some people are trying to brush it off as nothing but exaggerated gossip, are quietly bracing for a major revelation to drop any second now. Reports suggest Camilla remains largely unaware of the growing drama, while officials scramble to weigh the implications of these documents. The woman at the center of this storm seemingly has no idea her supposed rights are being questioned. Now, pay close attention. This is where the reality of the situation really starts to hit home. This is no longer just some dry archival matter. It is a battle for legacy and authority, proving Queen Elizabeth's influence is still very much alive. And if the rumors hold up, everyone involved will have to face a question they have avoided for years. But that document was really only the beginning of the headache, because its origins trace back to one of the Queen's most deeply guarded decisions long before the current chaos. Queen Elizabeth reportedly worried about the future of family heirlooms and how historical records would stay protected long after her own reign ended. What might have looked like a simple administrative move could actually be something much more calculated. As investigators dig further into this verified decree, their focus is shifting toward the heart of the entire controversy, the Windsor Vault itself, which has held a mythical status for generations. It is not just a storage room behind ancient stone walls, it is so much more. According to royal traditions, it is a living repository of memory, responsibility, and total continuity. You and I are looking at the final resting place of the monarchy's most priceless heritage pieces. These artifacts bridge the gap between reigns, holding stories of triumph, crisis, sacrifice, and endless change. It turns out That vault held way more than just royal jewels and fancy ceremonial gold. We are talking private letters, state records, and family heirlooms connected to every major royal moment. Some of these things were worth a fortune, but their real value was something else entirely. You see, they were priceless because they were symbolic, a living thread from the past. Two bridge one hook, stick with me here, because you and I are about to see how this legacy was truly guarded. To those on the inside, it wasn't about owning stuff, it was about being a loyal steward. That mindset matched Queen Elizabeth perfectly, especially how she viewed her lifelong duty to the throne. While everyone else was obsessing over the latest headlines, she was busy planning for the next 50 years. Politicians came and went like seasons, but she stayed focused on keeping the institution itself alive. Insiders often said she knew a monarch's real job wasn't just governing the present day, it was about protecting the future, no matter what it took to get the job done. That is why she spent so much time during her later years auditing royal assets and archives. As her reign entered its final chapter, she started quietly consulting with her most trusted advisors. These meetings were all about one thing: making sure royal history stayed safe from any future family drama. Details are still being debated. But it seems she put special rules in place to lock this down. The goal wasn't to play favorites or punish anyone, which is a detail you really need to grasp. She wanted to guarantee that royal heritage stayed what it was always meant to be. It was a sacred trust, passed down cleanly from one generation to the very next. Bridge to tension builder now. Pay attention. This is where the historians found something that completely changed the game. The wording of the decree emphasized responsibility over entitlement and guardianship over just owning things. Suddenly, this wasn't just some boring legal paper gathering dust in a dark archive somewhere. It looked like a brilliant final philosophy that Queen Elizabeth had been crafting for years. And that realization brought up one incredibly uncomfortable question that everyone started asking. If this decree was built to stop royal history from becoming personal property, then who was in charge? More importantly, who had been left out of the loop entirely by the late Queen? Palace insiders began whispering that some very famous names might have been deliberately frozen out. At first, it sounded like total nonsense, but the more the experts looked, the worse it got. One name was suspiciously absent, and it was the kind of omission you just could not ignore. The real shock wasn't what the decree actually said, it was what it left out. Bridge 3 pivot, I know what you are thinking, but just wait until you see how this omission stunned the palace. By the time the legal teams finished their review, they weren't looking at broad concepts anymore. They had zoomed in on something much more specific, hidden deep within the legal text. It was a restricted access provision tied directly to who could control the Windsor Vault. On the surface, the clause looked simple enough, just outlining who could review the royal holdings. But the deeper you read, the more the specific details started to look absolutely intentional. Sources say the document clearly defined a very specific group of people allowed to handle these assets. The names themselves mattered less than the strict principle that the Queen was trying to set. Those included were tied strictly to duty, not to the perks or the power of the position. Everything pointed toward long term guardianship and keeping the institution stable for decades to come. It reflected her belief that royal heritage should stay with those who protect it, not profit from it. At first, the implications of that distinction were flying right over everyone's heads. But then came the discovery that turned all that quiet concern into total, genuine alarm. Brid foreclosure, as researchers dug through the files, one absence became impossible to ignore, and you and I both know what that means for the future. While several senior figures appeared connected to the framework, the exclusion was clearly the main event. You and I are about to uncover a scandal that rocked the palace to its core. When lists of official duties dropped, Camilla's name was suspiciously nowhere to be found. No overseer role, no access rights, not even a mention in the protected collections. The reaction inside the royal inner circle was immediate, intense, and frankly shocked. Some whispered it was just a simple clerical error, a classic administrative blunder. Others wondered if some secret, hidden documents were still waiting to be unearthed. But the more they compared the records, the more a chilling pattern emerged. Insiders claim every single review pointed toward the same unsettling, quiet conclusion. This exclusion did not look accidental at all. It looked cold, calculated, and deliberate. That realization hit them like a freight train, triggering a massive wave of scrutiny. Palace lawyers were scrambled to assess the fallout of this massive legal discovery, not because the decree changed the monarchy overnight, but because the intent mattered. Now, pay attention here. This is where you and I start seeing the real game. If Queen Elizabeth truly locked down the Windsor vault, the reasoning had to be massive. Every single clause, every line of text became the target of an intense, deep dive examination. For King Charles, reports say this situation became an absolute nightmare to process. He was a monarch searching for solid answers while facing his mother's final years. Why would such a specific, restrictive provision exist in the first place? Why give responsibilities to some people while completely freezing others out? And maybe the most painful question of all, why was this hidden until now? The uncertainty weighed heavily on everyone involved in this high stakes royal mess. This wasn't just boring legal talk anymore. It was a massive crisis of trust. They realized Queen Elizabeth might have seen challenges coming years before anyone else. Each new finding just deepened the mystery, making it even more impossible to solve. As speculation went into overdrive, competing theories flooded every royal hallway. Some said it was just practical history keeping, others sensed a darker, personal motive. Whatever the truth is, one fact still stands out above all the palace drama. The omission remains completely unexplained, leaving everyone grasping at thin air. And as investigators peeled back layers of old files, a new possibility finally surfaced. It was a discovery that shattered every assumption about the Queen's final wishes. Let's pause for a second. This moment hits different when you realize what's coming. The deeper they dug, the clearer it was that this was never an accident. What turned concern into a total crisis was a new pile of supporting evidence. These records reinforced the decree's legitimacy, making the situation look even bleaker. What started as a simple question became a mountain of intentional proof. People inside the circle had been praying for a simple, boring administrative fix. They hoped a document was just misplaced or that a record had been lost. Those possibilities brought comfort because they meant it was just a huge misunderstanding. But that thin thread of reassurance snapped when new archive material came to light. Archivists uncovered related references scattered across multiple secret, long forgotten files. No single document was a smoking gun, but together they were impossible to ignore. Notes from senior advisors and old administrative records suddenly surfaced everywhere. Historical references that seemed like nothing yesterday suddenly had a massive new meaning. That one controversial document was now surrounded by a growing network of truth. You and I can see why the implications were impossible for them to dismiss, because you and I are about to unravel a royal scandal that goes way deeper than anyone realized. What looked like a random old document was actually a masterfully crafted plan. Royal circles were rocked to their core. Historians were absolutely split on what this actually meant. It was chaos. Some saw it as proof of Queen Elizabeth's genius foresight, others weren't so sure, arguing that simple paperwork doesn't always reveal a person's true motive. Still, Even the skeptics couldn't deny the cold, hard facts staring back from the archives. The debate shifted. It wasn't about if the decree was real, but why it was made in the first place. Inside the palace, the vibe was just as intense. Some insiders insisted it was just the late queen protecting the crown's legacy. Others whispered about deeper, darker family drama behind the scenes. The uncertainty was spreading like wildfire at every single level. Every new answer just birthed three more impossible questions. Now pay attention because this is exactly where things get dangerous for King Charles. Advisors were constantly hounding him for guidance. As the public started catching wind of the rumors, private talks were becoming a nightmare to keep under wraps. The king felt completely trapped between two impossible choices. He had his mother as legacy a legend who defined the monarchy for decades. On the other side, his wife Camilla was facing more heat than she'd ever seen before. Ignoring this wasn't an option anymore. Those quiet archival whispers were turning into loud, uncomfortable conversations among the royal inner circle. Awareness of the mess spread like a virus, bringing nothing but anxiety and doubt. This wasn't just a boring historical debate for nerds anymore. And honestly, that is what makes the situation so incredibly volatile. Each new record only deepened the mystery instead of clearing it up. Every single layer uncovered just revealed another hidden piece of the puzzle underneath. While experts debated the past, the fallout was already hitting real lives in the present. This wasn't just about old ink on paper, it was a crisis hitting home right now. For King Charles, it was a brutal clash between loyalty to his mother and loyalty to his wife. No monarch should ever have to deal with a conflict this messy. What started as a minor discovery had evolved into something intensely private and painful. Reports show that as legal teams and historians finished their work, the details landed right on the king's desk. The early days of optimistic doubt were completely gone. Now he was faced with ironclad interpretations and expert reports that demanded a reaction. The question wasn't if the decree was authentic, that was a settled matter. The real question was what its existence actually meant for the future of the crown. You can imagine the weight of that. He spent countless hours trying to find a way out. Every possible angle was scrutinized by his team, looking for any loophole or mistake. They searched for anything to explain the mess away, but kept hitting a brick wall. The decree looked real, the evidence was solid, and the missing information was impossible to justify. For Charles, this was an emotional gut punch that had nothing to do with law. Elizabeth wasn't just a queen to him. She was his mother and his guiding light. Her choices carried massive weight, even from beyond the grave. Sources say the idea that she made a deliberate, cold choice about royal heritage was impossible for him to ignore. Yet believing it meant facing some truly heartbreaking family truths. You and I both know how these things go. Tension only builds when your own advisors are telling you to tread lightly. Stick with me because we are diving into a royal scandal where managing the fallout became far more dangerous than the history itself. Every single potential path held serious risks. If they simply ignored the decree, questions about respecting Queen Elizabeth's final wishes would explode. If they acknowledged it, public scrutiny would reach a fever pitch, and if details leaked, the debate would spiral completely out of control. The deeper officials dug into this mess, the clearer it became that there was absolutely no easy way out of this situation. Reports began surfacing that Camilla was urgently seeking clarification as news of the controversy rippled through the public eye. What once felt like a distant historical footnote now stood right at the center of every conversation, echoing through royal circles. According to insiders, the crushing weight of uncertainty proved just as difficult to manage as any final. Confirmed conclusion could have been questions lingered, interpretations clashed, yet the mountain of supporting evidence made it impossible to just brush this off as wild speculation. Behind those locked palace walls, the atmosphere reportedly turned more suffocating and strained with every single passing day. Advisors feverishly weighed their limited options, while historians scrambled to defend their own competing interpretations of the document. Legal experts reviewed hypothetical scenarios that, just a few weeks prior, would have seemed like something out of a fantasy novel. Above everything else, a deep, gnawing concern grew about the monarchy as an institution, and where individual loyalties truly rested. One harsh reality united everyone involved in this chaos. The reputation of the throne had become inseparable from the final outcome. As pressure mounted from every imaginable direction, the focus slowly shifted away from the historians, archivists, and high level advisors. The spotlight moved toward a much smaller, powerful group whose judgment would ultimately carry the most significant weight of all. Whatever Queen Elizabeth may have actually intended, the future of this decree depended on those sworn to protect royal tradition. Because this is where the tension hits its peak, we are about to see if the decree still holds real authority. Attention shifted toward the people who would ultimately decide if this controversial decree could still be enforced in the modern era. Weeks of exhausting examination led to a single defining moment when the archivists finally delivered their official, long awaited conclusion. Years of agonizing uncertainty reportedly vanished in an instant, replaced by a final verdict that left everyone involved completely stunned. Questions had multiplied faster than anyone could find answers, while specialists argued over provisions and searched for hidden records. Yet, despite all the tangled complexity of this investigation, everything ultimately pointed toward one cold, hard, and decisive moment. The final, grueling verification process had officially reached its conclusion, and the results were ready to be revealed to the world. According to reports, the archivists responsible for examining the decree completed their work and presented their findings to senior officials. What was once treated as a mere historical curiosity was now being handled with a sense of extraordinary, life altering significance. Sources familiar with the internal review suggest this conclusion was only delivered after every single possible safeguard had been exhausted. Authentication records were combed through repeatedly, and every scrap of supporting documentation was checked against the official archival inventories. Historical timelines were scrutinized with military precision, leaving absolutely no room for error or misinterpretation during the process. Independent evaluations were reportedly conducted to eliminate any lingering doubt before the final report was ever even signed. You and I both know how these things go by the end. Officials weren't talking about possibilities anymore, but final conclusions. According to various accounts, the verdict was crystal clear. The decree was officially considered to be entirely authentic and valid. The supporting records were deemed consistent, and the entire framework surrounding the document appeared to be completely legitimate. While heated debates regarding the interpretation would undoubtedly continue, the question of the decree's historical credibility had finally been settled. For those who had spent weeks desperately hoping for a simpler explanation, this finding landed with the force of a wrecking ball. Palace officials were reportedly briefed almost immediately, and insiders describe a suffocating tension behind those closed doors. This wasn't just another dry historical discovery. The decree had become dangerously intertwined with questions about royal stewardship and authority. Its significance extended far beyond the dry legal wording, touching the very legacy of Queen Elizabeth herself in a profound way. Every single person involved understood that reality, and the weight of it was clearly visible on their faces during meetings. Royal historians reportedly emphasized this point during subsequent discussions, highlighting the gravity of what they had just uncovered. According to several interpretations, the document was viewed as a broader effort to preserve continuity within the royal institution itself. Many experts argued that it reflected the late Queen's enduring, lifelong focus on protecting royal heritage for all future generations. That perspective added a massive layer of emotional weight to an already incredibly sensitive and volatile situation for the palace. The debate was no longer just about dusty old rules, it was about understanding the true intentions of a powerful monarch. For King Charles, reports suggest the outcome was particularly difficult, forcing him to face a reality he never anticipated. Those close to royal circles describe a man confronted by a conclusion that he may have never expected to see in his lifetime. Stick with me, because this scandal just hit a breaking point where speculation ends and pure chaos begins. Accounts suggest the heavy emotional weight comes not just from the text, but the hidden implications. It points to secret decisions made during the final years of the Queen's long, storied life. Meanwhile, Camilla is reportedly left staring down the massive, looming consequences of this explosive verdict as word of these findings rips through royal circles. Everyone is scrambling to figure out the fallout. If this decree holds power, what does it actually mean for access to the legendary Windsor Vault? Are those old assumptions even valid anymore? Or is everything we thought we knew about to change? Now pay close attention here, because the situation is getting way more unsettling than we first thought. See, the verdict didn't actually end the controversy in many ways. It just poured fuel on the fire. Archivists confirm the document is legit, but they are staying dead silent on its secret, underlying purpose. Authenticity is proven. Sure, but the real intent, that remains a total mystery left to wild interpretation. And in that void of uncertainty, a brutal new conflict is beginning to tear through the palace walls. Once the decree is accepted as real, the big question screams for an answer. Why did she do this? What final message was Queen Elizabeth hoping to leave behind? And why hide it for all this time? Is this omission a reflection of her final wishes, or part of a strategy we do not understand? You and I can both see how this triggered something powerful, a fierce, ugly debate over her true intent. The decree settled the question of if it was real, but it ignited a war over what it means. Royal insiders, historians, and elite advisors are all at each other's throats arguing over her final decision. What follows isn't a simple resolution, but a brand new chapter filled with nothing but pure, messy uncertainty. Archivists delivered the verdict, and the document survived the scrutiny, but it failed to close the case. These conclusions have officially opened the door to a debate even larger than the scandal itself. The question isn't whether the decree exists anymore, but rather, what was her ultimate goal? Why did the Queen choose this specific path? And what hidden message is she trying to convey? Reports show that competing theories are emerging fast, and they are tearing the royal narrative apart. Some historians see this as the Queen's lifelong attempt to keep the monarchy's integrity totally pure. They argue she was always obsessed with protecting royal heritage from being tainted by any personal interests. This document isn't a controversy at all, it's just pure, calculated royal consistency. It is just another classic example of a monarch thinking decades ahead of everyone else in power. Others believe the situation is far more complicated, with sources suggesting the symbolism is deeper than practicality. Some advisors are questioning if the real point was never about access, but about making a statement. If the Windsor Vault is about stewardship, maybe this decree is a blunt message about royal responsibility. Perhaps it was never designed to target individuals, but to force a shift in the entire system. Yet, even those smart arguments struggle to explain the massive omission that has everyone so obsessed. That absence is impossible to ignore. And it sits right at the center of this entire firestorm. As the debate rages on, much bigger questions about the future of the monarchy are starting to surface. What does stewardship even mean in a modern world where traditions are constantly being questioned and challenged? Who should actually be entrusted with preserving this royal heritage when the rules are so unclear? How should decisions made by a past sovereign dictate the actions of the current one right now? These aren't just history lessons, they touch the very foundation of royal power and future continuity. Some say this controversy has evolved into a heated discussion about duty and passing the torch. Comparisons to earlier royal crises are already flying. As historians look back at how monarchs safeguarded tradition, each comparison seems to highlight the same reality. Queen Elizabeth spent decades shaping this monarchy's future. It is entirely possible this decree is just one more piece of a very long term, secret vision. Yet certainty remains impossible to find, and the public fascination is growing with every new development. You and I just witnessed a mystery that is capturing attention precisely because so much remains unknown. Trust me, you and I are about to unravel one of the most explosive royal scandals yet. No official answers, just total silence, which only made the rumor mill spin faster. Everyone from historians to insiders had a theory, but the truth stayed hidden. At the center of this storm, King Charles, trying to find his footing. He was desperate to protect his mother's massive legacy while keeping the monarchy strong. The pressure was insane, and every single move he made had heavy consequences. But a major reality was setting in the decree changed everything for everyone. Now pay attention, because the real debate is about to hit its peak. The focus shifted away from legal red tape and dry, boring documents. A deeper truth emerged, one that could totally redefine Queen Elizabeth's original intentions. As the scandal hit its boiling point, one final realization flipped the whole narrative. This was never just about some vault, it was about trust and power. It was about an enduring influence that still grips the royal family today. As the drama reached its endgame, something truly remarkable started to happen. The media obsessed over access rights and endless historical records. But slowly, those tiny details started to feel secondary to the bigger picture. The controversy wasn't about who was in or out of the inner circle. It was a reflection of the massive influence Queen Elizabeth still commands. Everyone involved seemed to land on the exact same shocking conclusion. The decree's real power wasn't in its restrictions, but in what they revealed. The Windsor Vault became the ultimate symbol of the late Queen's values. We used to think of it as just a room filled with priceless treasures, but royal experts agree its true importance is actually something much deeper. It represents pure continuity responsibility handed down through the generations. It's the belief that royal heritage belongs to the institution, not the individuals. That simple idea quietly directed the entire high stakes drama from the start. For King Charles, the emotional weight of this realization was incredibly profound. He was forced to face impossible questions about his family and his duty. Balancing his roles as son and sovereign is a mission almost nobody envies. The decree caused chaos, but it also reminded us of the crown's burden. Every decision echoes through history, and every choice dictates the future. Camilla's position remained a massive question mark in all of this. Opinions were split, leaving lingering drama that just wouldn't go away. Some saw it as pure symbolism, while others feared the real world impact. It showed how fast private lives collide with royal institutional duties. The conversation shifted to what this means for the monarchy's future. Commentators see this as a warning of the challenges the next royals face. Questions about duty and stewardship aren't going to vanish anytime soon. Future generations will have to answer for these same exact heavy issues. So, what do you and I take from this? It's all about succession. What made this so gripping was the massive contrast at its core: personal loyalty versus cold, hard tradition, the ultimate royal tug of war. Queen Elizabeth knew this tension better than anyone, living it for decades. The decree was her way of leaving a clear mark on that struggle, and as the dust settles, that document becomes a piece of history. Because we are diving into a truly explosive chapter in royal history, historians will keep debating its secrets, and commentators will fight over what it means. But get this, the massive scandal around this decree turned it into something way bigger. It became a symbol of a monarch whose shadow still looms over everything to this day. As those heavy vault doors stay shut, you and I can see the truth echoing through the halls. Some decisions keep ruling from the grave long after the monarch is gone. You and I just witnessed history, so hit that like button and stick around for more.